This is Michael Cowan, and welcome to Trial Lawyer Nation.
You are the leader in the courtroom, and you want the jury to be looking to you for the answers.
When you figure out your theory, never deviate.
You want the facts to be consistent, complete, and credible.
The defense has no problem running out the clock. Delay is the friend of the defense.
It's tough to grow a firm by trying to hold on and micromanage.
You've got to front load a simple structure for jurors to be able to hold on to.
What types of creative things can we do as lawyers, even though we don't have a trial setting?
Whatever you've got to do to make it real, you've got to do to make it real. But the person who needs convincing is you.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Trial Lawyer Nation, your source to win bigger verdicts, get more cases, and manage your law firm. And now, here's your host, noteworthy author, sought-after speaker, and renowned trial lawyer, Michael Cowan.
Trial Lawyer Nation is brought to you by LawPods. LawPods is the company that produces these podcasts. They make my life so easy. All I have to do is show up and talk, and they do all the recording, making sure it sounds good, the editing, the putting out clips for social media. If you are thinking about doing your own podcast, I highly recommend LawPods. We're going to start a new feature on this podcast. It's Ask Michael and Mallory Anything. If you have anything you'd like to ask either Mallory or me, we're going to start doing an episode every couple months where we're going to answer your questions. So just send them in to me at michael@cowanlaw.com, and Mallory and I will answer them. Anything from, legal strategy, marketing management, anything else in life you want to talk about, we'll be glad to talk about it with you. Again, Ask Michael and Mallory Anything. Just send us an email. We'll be glad to answer your questions. Today on Trial Lawyer Nation, I am excited that we have one of the top minds in digital marketing for lawyers, Jason Hennessey. Jason, how are you doing today?
Michael, it's such an honor to be here, man. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
For those listeners who don't know you already, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so I got into this world of digital marketing, SEO, back in 2001. So I've been doing this for most of my adult life. And I came into the legal industry in about 2008 and have been working primarily with attorneys, mostly personal injury lawyers, since that time. And, working, to drive more leads and more cases to some of the biggest, law firms in the country. So
how did you learn to do SEO? Well, first of all, let me take one more step back. What is SEO?
Okay. Yeah. So for those that might not even know, right? So SEO stands for search engine optimization. My entire life is predicated upon an algorithm that I don't control, right? That's the Google algorithm. And how you learn SEO is by truly just practicing and testing, right? Because there's really no book that you could read. It's not really something that they could teach in college. And so it's self-taught for the most part. And then you just learn by practicing and building a case study, and a lot of things that you apply in one market. Like if I'm doing an SEO campaign in Dallas, the same kind of rules apply if I were competing in Atlanta, right? And so you just continue to test out theories, and once you kind of prove the hypothesis, then you just continue to execute and you scale it. And so this for me started out as a need back when I was in college. I was in the U.S. Air Force. I got out of the Air Force. I was going to college at UNLV, contemplating going to law school, actually, Michael, myself. And I shadowed a district attorney for 30 days, and I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so I was an entrepreneur, I guess. And then I found this whole world of SEO just because I had a side hustle that was paying for college. It was a DJ company or DJ weddings on the weekends. And that's where I learned this SEO stuff. And again, it started as a need. It turned into a curiosity. It turned into a passion, and eventually it turned into an obsession, right? And so fast forward now 24 years, and I'm still doing the same things that I was doing back then.
That's awesome. Now, I'm having you on here. There's a lot of hucksters in your industry. I'm going to be real frank. And, before I talk to you about the possibility of doing business with you, but also before I'd have you on my podcast, I really checked you out, talked to other people that have worked with you for years, would give you a thumbs up. But in contrast, I get I don't know, 5, 10 emails a day from someone promising for me to be page one of Google, whatever that means if I just give them money.
Mhm.
How do, we as lawyer consumers, who I think are the biggest suckers in the whole marketing world,
Yeah.
how do we differentiate between someone like you that can actually get it done and the hucksters out there? What can we do to protect ourselves?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, Michael, that was the reason why I wrote my book. So I wrote actually two books, but the book for legal is a book called Law Firm SEO. And it's really like me taking 20 years of practical experience and kind of jotting it down so that someone like you, maybe that doesn't know, what SEO is, or, how to do it, or how to hold somebody accountable. But I want to basically kind of lay it all out so that you are educated and empowered to make the best decision for your firm, right? Regardless of if you hire me. Like, I just truly want to set the record straight so that people don't get taken advantage of. And that was really like the goal of writing my book. So much so that I actually mail out about 400 copies every month
Oh, wow.
to attorneys. Like, I'll just pick a market. Like, if I want to focus on, I don't know, South Florida, right? I might find 400 personal injury lawyers in South Florida. I might mail them out books, right? Or I've got Facebook campaigns where I'm spending like $10,000 a month to basically attract people to want to get a free copy of my book. And I cover the cost of shipping and handling too. And that's truly it. That's like me giving back. Is like, if I can, empower them to either do it themselves, right? That's good. Or if they don't want to do it themselves, if they want to hire an agency, knowing what to look for and how to hold people accountable, regardless of if it's my agency, right? So
Yeah.
that, I think, is one of the things that I think separates me. Is I'm a very open book, and I spend a lot of time educating people, regardless of if I work with them or not.
So I kind of want to go, to some of the things that provide value for our listeners. Before I do that, I guess if someone wants to get a copy of your book, how could they ask for one?
Yeah, I think, let me double check here.
We can obviously we'll have a link in the show notes for those listening.
Yeah, free. I'll get the link here before the end. Okay, there it is. It's freelawfirmseobook.com. So if you go to freelawfirmseobook.com, you'll be taken to a page where you just enter your name and your address, and then we will get you a copy of that in the mail.
All right. Well, let me ask you, you've helped a number of law firms grow, and a lot of us, want to grow either. Like, I know I want to grow my law firm, other people are just getting started in the law firm. What are the most important investments you think a personal injury lawyer should be making early in their career when they're trying to set up a practice that's going to be, have a long-term success?
Yeah. So there's two pieces of that. I think if you need to, make the phone ring immediately, SEO is definitely not the play. SEO is one of those things that, the seeds that you plant today will eventually turn into crops, which will eventually turn into fruit, right? But, in some cases you might be 6 months away from generating a phone call. In some cases, you might be 18 months away, depending on how competitive it is. And I'll talk about that 18-month one in just a second here. But I think, there's things that you could be doing right away. For one, setting up a Google My Business listing, for your office, getting as many reviews as you can possibly get, trying to compete in your local market. Like, I'm doing some consulting right now with a personal injury lawyer that doesn't have the budget to compete with the Morgans and Morgans of the world
Who
in
does?
Los Angeles, right? So I said, don't worry about that. Let's just compete like locally in Burbank, right? California, right? Let's just kind of build out a strategy there, do pay-per-click there, do LSAs there, try to get reviews there, right? So I would say really try to focus in on your specific market where your office is, and don't try to be all things to all people and try to compete with a lot of the bigger firms, because you're setting yourself up for failure at that point.
I mean, you've talked about one is trying to compete with, if you're like a new startup and you're going to say, well, I'm going to go Los Angeles and try to go head to head with Morgan and Morgan, which has 1,000 lawyers and who knows how much budget.
Yeah.
What are some other common mistakes you see, younger lawyers and new firm owners, because not all new firm owners are young, but
Yeah,
what are
that's
some of the
true.
common mistakes you see?
What sometimes I see moving into marketing campaigns without really kind of being educated on that. Or even doing things themselves, right? Like trying to execute a paid campaign for yourself without really kind of knowing how to operate like an AdWords account, right? Sometimes I see people like waste a lot of money, right? Because you're having to learn with your own budget. And so sometimes it might make sense to have like a professional that comes in and just kind of that does that for you. Same thing with SEO. That's the reason why I started coaching law firms, is because if they didn't have the budget to hire my agency, I would hate for them to try to go out and execute and waste a lot of time and money, like implementing the wrong strategies.
Yeah.
So at least if I could provide like an hour and a half per month and kind of steer them in the right direction, so that this way they're not wasting their time, they're not wasting their money, and they're basically doing things that are kind of make them progress over time. So I think the most important thing is realizing, what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Maybe try to outsource or delegate your weaknesses to people that are competent, and educate yourself on the process, right? Maybe watch a couple YouTube videos about digital marketing, so that not so much that you have to do it, so that you know how to hire somebody to do it for you.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like one of our recent guests, Brian Glass, he's done consulting with you. He said it's no secret. He said it on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And they have the great legal marketing. They want to do a lot of their own stuff. Whereas I was talking to my COO, and she's like, "Well, I'm talking to these people at other firms. They do their own, SEO in house." I'm like, "We don't need to do we don't have the expertise. If we hire someone that says they've done it before, have they done it right? You won't know for a year or two whether it's working or not. And it's just every hour I spend on SEO is an hour I'm not spending on a big case. I mean, at this point in my career. So if you look at the value of my time, for me to learn SEO makes zero sense. Whereas I've got a referral partner who was a digital marketer before he went to law school. So he might benefit from some coaching, because he's also spending a lot of his time practicing law now. But, he has a much greater ability to do things on his own than I would have.
I know who you're talking about too, by the way.
Oh, you do? Okay. I'll ask you afterwards, see if
I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But, and I love the guy, but he probably, would get better results if he had someone that was more up to date helping him on that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, Ben and Brian are great people.
Yeah.
Same thing, like they have good intentions, they execute, but they just needed somebody to tell them what to do, like what strategy should we be doing. And since we started working with them, you really seen the growth as a result of that.
Even though they never talked about a podcast and I never had a discussion with Ben Glass about it, this podcast would not exist had I not gone to some early great legal marketing things and been inspired. Well, how can I do things? And honestly, part of my problem was like, who am I to have a podcast? Who am I to hold my own boot camp or seminar? And then just realizing you just have to have the guts to do it and not have to go. Ben's really big on you don't do anything unethical, but you don't have to play by everyone else's rules.
Oh yeah, a true pioneer in the space, an icon, and somebody that takes action for sure. Yes.
So how competitive is, compared to other kinds of marketing markets, how competitive is personal injury as a marketing space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So before I got into personal injury, I was doing a lot of work in like the online poker space, right? Which some would argue is the most competitive space in on the internet, right? And so, the strategies that I were using and deploying in that space, were working, and it was great. And so when I kind of pivoted and I went into personal injury, personal injury was also competitive, but back in 2008, it wasn't as competitive. Over the years, Google has made it harder, so it's not as easy anymore. Like you used to see a lot of like lead generation companies just kind of come into a market and, just kind of apply advanced SEO strategies and start to kind of dominate regardless. Google has kind of changed the algorithm so that, people that are more capable, that have more trust, authority, and expertise, actually takes over some of those SERP results instead of like a digital marketer that's just a little bit more savvy. So that's actually in the favor of most of the personal injury lawyers. But at the same time, it does require, a strategy, it requires skill, and it requires a budget, right? And so the one case study that I was talking about, it's a site called birthinjurylawyer.com, right? As well as I do how how much those cases are worth, right? And so I had a client of ours that came to us and wanted to take a website, birthinjurylawyer.com, which is a site that he had, and he was basically starting from zero. He didn't have a website, he didn't have any content, it didn't have any authority or links. And he came to me and said, "Hey, I want to kind of build a website, a national website that competes for birth injury lawyer." And I looked at that and like, obviously it's going to be very competitive, right? Because those cases are so valuable. And I told him, I'm like, if we get started today, it's probably going to be about 18 months before we even see our first lead, right?
Wow.
And so he made a pretty significant investment into building out this website to the tune of like $500,000 into an SEO campaign, right? But, before he even seen any ROI. But now the website is generating like leads and cases every single month, and some of these cases, like one was just a $5 million case, right, that he got from it, right? So in the end, he ended up making his investment back, and he's got this incredible asset now. But, it took a risk, it took an investment, right? It's just like anything that you invest in, whether it's the stock market or whatever you do, right? It's, it takes investment.
And there's I think a mix. So like SEO, like you said, is long play. It could be 18 months before you can get a call. Kind of like doing like a TV or billboard campaign where you're branding. It's multiple years before you get any kind of return on investment.
Sure.
Are there things that people can do, and maybe they do a mix in the short run to make the phone ring like now?
Sure. A couple of things right away is try to find referral partners, right? I mean, like
Right.
you're great at that, right? I think that's a good use of their time. Take a lot of people out to lunch and generate a
Right.
lot of phone calls, maybe. So there's definitely things like that you can do. But from a digital marketing perspective, LSAs, they call those local service ads. That's where you're paying Google for more of a lead or a phone call. I think those are a good use of budget. Again, setting up a Google My Business listing in your local market and making sure you're getting reviews. You can experiment with some paid social as well, where you can kind of run social media campaigns that are targeting specific people. And then right now, I think even like YouTube marketing is pretty cheap as well, right? The eyeballs are pretty cheap. So, but you have to definitely start with something and then just measure it. So if you're spending $5,000 on marketing, right, whether it's a combination of everything that I just talked about, try to measure like what is the average cost per lead and what is the average cost per signed case, right? And if one of those channels is producing a little bit better than the others, just maybe lift the budget in those channels and then just continue to optimize it and tweak it. And, hopefully you're kind of growing, the amount of leads that you're getting and the amount of signed cases, almost to the point where it's like, okay, now the other problem is not so much the marketing. Now I got to deal with the operations, right? I got to hire another attorney. I need to hire another paralegal. I need to hire an intake team, right? So if a good SEO company does their job right, we create intake problems, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's what you want. I mean, that's in my New Mexico. I'm partners in a firm in New Mexico, and that's our issue. We're being able to process the number of cases we're getting. There's a lot of things you have to do right up front. It's a operational challenge. It's a great one. I'm thrilled to have that challenge, but
it's good problems, right? But it is a problem.
But if it's not solved, you've wasted all that money, because not only do you lose the clients you signed up, but then they go give bad reviews, and all of our 5-star reviews get taken over
There you
by
go. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
so why are Google reviews important?
So, well, Google reviews, for one thing, it's the perception, right? Because somebody that's never heard of you, right? That's the first thing that they're looking at. When they're doing a search for a personal injury lawyer, even if they saw your TV commercial and they're Googling you, right? If they see that you have a 3.5 star rating and other attorneys have like a 4.9, the perception is that, maybe there's a better solution for my legal needs, right? So
Right.
that's the first thing, is the perception. The second thing is, in order to rank competitively in the local listings in your market, right? There's only 3 spots there. Google is not going to reward a firm that has a 3.5 rating when there's other options that have higher reviews, right? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, the keywords that people put in the reviews is also part of the algorithm too, right? Like, and an obvious example of this is like, if I ever go to Texas, right, and I want like a good brisket sandwich or something, I'm going to go and I'm going to be in Austin. I'm going to type best brisket in Austin, right? And you're going to see like the Google My Business listings are appearing for barbecue joints that have like reviews that say this was the best brisket, right?
Right.
So those keywords that people put into the reviews are also part of the algorithm as well. So, if there's one thing that people are listening, and they take away from this is get reviews consistently and just make sure that you're keeping your services up to a level so that people are actually posting positive things about you on the internet.
Yeah, I guess I never knew about the keywords in review. I guess if we're doing a campaign to ask our clients to review us, maybe suggest, here's
Yeah,
some words you could use. Could you use these terms,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And you can't pay your clients for reviews or you'll get blacklisted really quick.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the rule of Google. You know what I mean? But you can incentivize people. Like I see a lot of firms that are incentivizing their staff, right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we want to get 200 reviews by the next 6 months, and any review that you get, I'll give you a $50 bonus. So
Yeah.
there are things that you can do.
Yeah, we incentivize staff, but we just tell them you cannot share the incentive
That's right.
with the client because that'll
Yeah.
get us in trouble.
That doesn't look well. Yeah. And here's the other thing about the reviews too is some people think that, the only time to kind of get a review is like at the end of the case, right? It's 2 years later, 3 years later, and you give them this big check and here's the link and you leave us a review. I would argue that you can get a review at the beginning of the case, right? So if somebody calls your firm and they get a great experience and it's a good first impression and you answered all their questions, there's nothing wrong about saying, hey, listen, if I answered your questions and now you feel comfortable signing with us, can I just send you a link to maybe leave us a review? It's very helpful for us, right?
Yep.
So don't wait until the end of the journey. Maybe start at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are different parts in the course of a case where people tend to be happiest. And,
That's right.
the check is often, not always, because there's sometimes unrealistic expectations or it took longer to fund than, you had a lien.
Mm-hmm.
So you have someone who's thrilled with the number and then it's 2 months later when you finish negotiating with the medical bills, they're not happy anymore because it took too long.
Sure.
So you look for other times when they're going to be happy.
Yep.
So let's say I have a smaller firm, a more limited budget. I'm in a competitive market. Do I want to say in my marketing message that I do all kind of personal injury so I can try to capture as many of the possible leads I can? Or do I want to specialize in one narrow area to look like a specialist in that area?
Yeah.
What does better?
So that's a good question. So, there's two ways that you can go about that, right? You could kind of limit it based on the geo coordinate of where your office is, right? Like we talked about, like a law firm that's just strictly in Burbank, and they got a Burbank personal injury lawyer page, a Burbank car accident, a truck accident, right? It's just everything is about Burbank. In a lot of cases, you'll actually rank competitively, even, if you have big people in the market, right? Because Google looks at something called topical relevance. And so if there's a law firm and everything is about Burbank, regardless of if the website is as powerful as a site like, forthepeople.com or some of the other big players, like that site is going to get a preferential treatment because they want to serve up content that people are local in Burbank, right? So that is one approach. The other approach is, yes, there's nothing stopping you from, if you just want to be the Uber and Lyft lawyer, right? Specifically in a city, even as big as Los Angeles, right? Like you could, I see firms that like all they do is lemon law, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. Again, the topical relevance of all the content that you're creating is making you a subject matter expert in the eyes of Google in that, and then if you go and you write a book about, being a lemon law attorney or being the Uber and Lyft attorney, now that's also sending a lot of signals as well. They call that EAT signals, your expertise, authority, and trust. Those are other signals that are kind of being sent as well, because now you're a publisher, you're an author, right? And so that's also stuff that's going to help feed not only Google, but a lot of these chatbots, like, your chat GPTs, right? So if somebody types in, who's the best lemon lawyer in Los Angeles? Well, chat GPT is going to look at, okay, well, who ranks for this? What does their content look like? Who has the most reviews? Anybody write a book on this subject, right? And so then boom, now ChatGPT is going to say, hey, Michael Cowan is the best lemon lawyer attorney in Los Angeles, right? So there's other things in the future that are also going to affect this too. So,
and on the books, does it matter whether it's a self-published book that you just, use whatever goes to Amazon, or whether it has I guess the Google juice or backlinks of
Yep.
a publisher? Does that make much of a difference?
No, it doesn't. In fact, both of my books were self-published.
Okay.
I went through a company called Scribe Media for my first book, and my second book was a company called Greenleaf. And so, they end up on Google. We get reviews for that on Google. In fact, I wrote the book Law Firm SEO, and I named it Law Firm SEO as an SEO strategy, right? Because I know my competitors are trying to rank for the word law firm SEO, because that's where our market searches. And I wanted not only my agency to rank for that term, but I also wanted to leverage Amazon to rank for that term too.
Yeah.
So now if you do a search for law firm SEO, you'll see my agency, and then you'll see my book, and then you'll see videos. And so I'm kind of dominating that keyword, and it's all by design, right? And so that's why I named my book that.
So I should think about that for my next book then.
Yeah, think about the name of it, because you can leverage that, truck accident attorney,
Right.
something like that, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Big Rig Justice probably wasn't a great name for SEO purposes. You also talk about social media, and one thing that I see, there's things you can do to get views on social media. And I'm going to be a little controversial. I'm just going to be myself. There are, I'm big into everyone being equal, and most of my partners are female, and I see some female lawyers out there posting some stuff that get a lot of guys looking at them. Thirst trap videos, skimpy clothes, bikinis.
Mm-hmm.
Do those really help you get clients, or is there a line between, okay, I can do outrageous things, but will those actually hurt my credibility, or do they work? I have no idea. I'm just asking.
Each year, the law firm of Cowan Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. And now, back to the show.
It really comes down to, who do you want to be seen as, right? What is your character, right? What is your legacy, right? Sure, there's different strategies that you could, deploy to as almost like PR's publicity stunts, right?
Yeah.
And kind of go that route. And sure, some of them will be more successful than others, right? I know that there was the girl, the Hawk Ta girl, I guess,
Yeah.
all over the news, right? Yeah, I mean, that just kind of happened, and next thing you know, she's blown up, right? But
would someone want to hire her for a multi-million-dollar, your relative was killed or paralyzed, and
that's
now,
what I'm saying, right? Probably not, right? So
Yeah.
I would just stay true to who you are. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. A lot of people look at people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Yeah.
And, and they start creating videos as though they're Gary V, right? And you can tell that they're very uncomfortable in that setting, right? And so, so just be yourself, right? I like when you said that, Michael. Listen, I'm just going to say what I say. I'm going to be myself here. And, that's who I am. All of the content that I put out on social media is just me talking about a subject that I have expertise in, that I love, and, and take it as it is, right? I'm not going to go and try to, be, Mr. Beast, and just
Right.
because I know his model works, right? That's just not who I am.
Now, on your personal social media, you also share a lot of family stuff. I mean, going on trips with your kids, going to Oregon football games. Do you think that's important? I'll tell you a story after you give me your answer on that.
Yeah. So 100%. In fact, every time I see somebody, the first thing that they say is not so much oh my God, Jason, I love chapter 7 of your book. That's not the first thing they say. The first thing they say is oh my God, can you adopt me? I wish I would have went on that trip with you to Asia, or I wish, right? Because I think what happens is, at the end of the day, people like to do business with those that they like and trust. And I am my authentic self on social media, so much to a fault, I would say. And, and so that's just who I am. And so I like to share experiences. I like to give my kids and my family a life that I didn't have when I was a kid. And, and I do share that on social. But I think it's important. And I think that's part of the reason why we are growing as an agency, is because I am my authentic self, and the person that's posting that stuff on social media with my family, wherever I am, is going to be the same person that's on a podcast, or is going to be the same person on a sales call. Like I'm not going to take advantage of nobody. You can Google me. There's nothing bad about me online at all. You know, I take great pride in that. And I'd rather tell people that I can't help them if the expectations are not realistic, rather than take somebody's money and try to finesse it only to make somebody pissed off in the end, right? So but I do think that that's important to be, if you are going to share, just kind of share with your authentic self.
And I will say, we were looking before we ever called y'all, and to be full disclosure, listener, we're in the courting process with each other right now. We've got a proposal from y'all. We're doing our budgets for next year, seeing what we can spend, whether we're operationally ready. We got a lot of things on our end we're looking at. But when we were looking to decide who are we even going to call, we were following you on social media. I think you and I have been Facebook friends for a long time.
We have, yeah.
And my CEO says, well, I like him because I see him there with his family. He seems like a good person. He seems more trustworthy than some of the competitors. So I mean, that was actually on her vote. That was a big factor driving her vote on who we went with.
See, that's helpful. I appreciate that. And that's definitely not a strategy, I guess, if you will, but it's interesting.
It wasn't part of mine. You could have been the biggest scumbag in the world. I was talking to your to other customers of yours, and if you were effective, that's what I cared about, because I'm writing the check.
That's right.
But it is a tiebreaker for me. But for her, it was huge. It was a huge factor of I want someone I know I can trust, that I want to do business with. If they're not a good person, I don't want to do business with them.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I'm the same way, right? We hire people as well, and it's the same kind of a thing that we look at too. Yeah.
I get more engagement from posting a run or posting something I did with one of my kids than I ever do from a multi-million-dollar settlement.
Yeah. I love following you on social media too, right? Because there's not that many law firms in the United States that get the results that you do. And some of those, referral checks that you kind of post occasionally are just mind blowing. So yeah.
I should have another one by the end of the year to post, or we're just waiting for the check. So
I love it.
Keep looking.
Yeah.
So another big topic I hear all the time is AI, or artificial intelligence. I think there's already people using AI to write content. You can usually tell when you read it, but at least today.
Yep.
So it's a two-part question. One, right now, what effect do you think AI has? And then two, what do you think in the future AI is going to do to SEO and digital marketing?
Yeah, so AI has allowed both people and agencies to get a lot more efficient, right? You can do more with less. But to your point, yeah, you just can't take a piece of content from ChatGPT and publish it on a website. Google will know that it's a piece of content directly from ChatGPT, and it won't treat it as favorable as somebody that wrote a piece of content that kind of blends in some of their own personal experiences and their stories and their case studies, right? There's ways to kind of make that a little bit more unique, right? However, it is effective. In fact, we had a client in Atlanta that there was an explosion. I think it was a chemical plant explosion. And so it happened, I think, on a Friday. My client seen that there were people running ads already for that. And he said, hey, can we get out in front of this? So we wrote a piece of content, mostly using AI. We even created an AI podcast, which sounds like two people that are in a morning show talking about the content that we published, and we put it on there, right? It's really impressive. So that'll keep people on the page longer, because people might not want to read. They just might want to listen to that. And then we published it. And then, literally that same day, we were ranking position number 6 for this keyword that we're targeting. And then we did some strategies on Monday and Tuesday, and we pushed it up to number 1. And again, this is an AI piece of content on a website that is authoritative. Don't get me wrong, but I think he signed up 200 cases, right?
Oh, wow.
200 cases from this. And that was just by leveraging AI. Another example with AI that we're using is we'll take a website that might have 2,000 pages of content, and we will translate the content into Spanish. And then basically now we have 4,000 pages of content, and half of it is in English, half of it is in Spanish. But it basically, the Spanish content preserves the SEO strategy that we deployed for English. And so now you're basically able to get, more traffic, more leads, and more cases by just leveraging the content that you already had in multiple languages. So there are so many use cases where you can use AI, and that's just like scratching the surface. But you have to look at AI as an opportunity and not a threat, right? That's the key.
And what do you think's next with AI and digital marketing?
I think it could get really scary. I think at some point there could be Michael Cowan and Jason Hennessey on a podcast, and it's not even us talking. It looks like you, it sounds like you, same with me, right? And, and there could be a lot more scams that are taking place. There's, I think it could go way out of control. Who knows?
Yeah. One thing I saw that was so impressive, a friend of mine does mass torts, and he wanted to send a video update message to every, all 3,000 clients he had in this one mass tort.
Mm-hmm.
So he recorded one video saying like, "Hey, Jason, this is so-and-so. I want to talk to you about this." And then the AI would edit each video and change the Jason into that client's name.
Wow. See,
that's in his voice, And
Yep.
so he showed it, so he just showed like the first 100, "Hey, so-and-so," like, "Hey, Jason, hey, Lisa, hey," and he only had to record it once. And so I could see that, like, you could do, let's say someone has already like reached out to you on your website but hasn't hired you yet. I could like one of my projects right now I'm doing, just a no-cost marketing, is I'm sending out 3 videos to potential or current referral partners every day.
Sure.
I just make a 20-second video. "Hey, this is Michael Cowan. Colin, wish you a happy holiday. By the way, I just hired another lawyer. We're trying to fill up his docket. If you have any cases we can help, I'd love to, feel free to call."
Sure.
And but I could just record one, and it could just put everyone's, because I always want to make sure I mention their name. I don't want to look like I'm sending like a generic video to
I
everybody.
get it. Yeah.
But with that tool, maybe I could, and it wouldn't look like a generic.
Oh yeah, there's a tool called HeyGen, where it could make you speak multiple languages too, right? You could have it
Yeah.
up, right? So yeah, so it'll be really, this is like literally inning number 1 of where we
Yeah.
will be with AI. Yeah, so it'll be pretty fascinating to kind of follow this.
What other trends in SEO, because we need to be thinking, SEO, you're planting a tree for 1 to 3 years before you start bearing fruit. So
It is. Mhm.
for what's coming up, you think in the next 3 to 5 years that we need to know about?
I think like you hit it on the head. I think people like to see a lot more video. I think just kind of getting out and creating video content is something that we're going to start to see a lot more of, and short video format, right? That's the TikToks of the world. I think the next generation, like, their attention spans are 6 seconds, right? So how do you capture somebody's attention within 6 seconds, and then how do you keep them? So I think we'll continuing to see more of that. The other thing is leveraging influencers to help market law firms. I think you don't really see a lot of that these days. I still think that is a very cheap and effective form of marketing. My daughter is 8 years old. Like, she doesn't watch TV. She doesn't listen to podcasts, right? Like, she's on YouTube, right? And she has YouTubers that she follows, and these YouTubers have influence. And whether or not, it's for somebody that's an 8-year-old that's opening toys, or if it's somebody that's into video games, right? I mean, there's all these different influencers, right? And you have to start to think about, like, where is your market, and where will they be in the next 3 years, and start to build out relationships with some of these influencers to get them to start talking about you. I think that's really powerful. Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old, and most of our dinner conversations relate around him telling me about a YouTube video he saw about Dragon Ball fan fiction, or theories about why a Dragon Ball fan fiction character did something that's not even in the anime. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But he's just really into it, and the different influencers, and the ones he likes, the ones he hates, and it's interesting.
Yeah, we'll see more of that. We're starting to see some lawyers that are trying to be influencers.
Yeah.
Some with more success than others. But, it's a whole nother opportunity to just leverage the influencers as well, that are just in different verticals. Sure.
And I think if you have local influencers, I mean, they may be cheaper than trying to get like a big celebrity, for example, that's got a.
No, exactly. That's my point. Is like, there might be like an influencer in the real estate market that has a lot of people that follow them, right? And maybe
Yeah.
you host an event. Maybe you have an influencer event at your office
Yeah.
where you have like 6 different influencers. Like one is like a painting influencer, and another one is into real estate, another one to video games, right? And you just have an influencer night at your office, and then they all bring their audience, and now you're giving
Yeah.
away free swag and stuff like that. Yeah.
Are you just, when I was thinking of, let's say, I'm just thinking randomly, it's like San Antonio foodie I see on TikTok.
Yeah.
Maybe I could offer them money, like, hey, let me pay you money and I will go eat lunch with you and appear on some of your videos, and then with a link to me.
That's a great idea, Michael. Like, that's thinking outside the box, right?
But that would only work, though, I guess, if I was posting content on TikTok where they are. I mean, because if I'm not posting
necessarily, because if they're talking about you, right?
Yeah.
You know, like that. If you're ever in any accident, you got to call Michael. He's the guy,
Yeah.
right? You know, like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I just thought of that, but yeah, that's whenever you start talking about these things, ideas start percolating, and then.
Oh yeah, I've got no shortage of ideas. I can't sleep at night because of that.
Okay, another question I have. Okay, so you get a website, you do all the SEO, you get people to click, they search, they see your website. Once they're on there, what do you need to have on the website to get them to actually click or call or email so that they can contact you and talk about hiring you?
Yeah, so you get them on the website, right? And that's mostly by way of a strategy, an SEO strategy, and and that requires like content, like that's the food that Google eats, right? But once they're on the website, like I said, it's the same thing as like, talking about like my personal social media where I'm posting videos and photos of me like doing things, right? You want to build trust with the person that's on the website, right? So for one, you want to have a video on there talking about like, welcome, to my website. My name is Michael Cowan. If you're on don't just get right into like, we're the best lawyers, like have some empathy, right? If you're on this page, right, there's probably a good chance that you or a loved one were involved in a truck accident, right? And listen, like we get it, we understand, like my firm has handled numerous truck accident cases. If you look below, you can see some of our verdicts. We're considered one of the top 10 trial lawyers in the country on, right? Just kind of build up trust with that person, right? Because that's really what's going to resonate. And then the other thing is, once they fill out a form submission, like don't just send them to a thank you page that just says thank you. They should land up on a thank you page that has another video thanking them for filling out a form, and then managing the expectations and letting them know exactly what's going to happen now, right? You filled out a form. Here's, our intake team. They're going to process this. You're going to receive an email from us. We're going to set up a call. Manage the expectations so that they don't go to the next attorney, right? They feel like, okay, great. I know what's going to happen now. Let me just wait for them to give me a call, right? So I think that's really important, is just kind of building up that trust in the form of video and some of your verdicts and case studies.
How about chat features? Are those important?
Yeah, those are important too. I would argue though that, I think a lot of people make mistakes by putting chat on their mobile device.
I can't stand that.
Yeah, I'm the same way, right? It covers up, like in some of these chat providers, I won't mention any names, but they're financially incentivized, to get you to click on the chat because they make $35 per every chat, right? And so sometimes what they'll do is they'll cover your phone number, right, with the chat, right? And then when you click on the X, it doesn't exit out. And anyway, so like I am a big fan of not putting chat on mobile, right? I want to get phone calls. However, on desktop, that's fine, right? It could sit in the bottom right corner if somebody wants to chat with you. But it is important, right? I mean, it helps to generate leads. If somebody's in the office and they're working and they're looking for an attorney, they might not be able to make a phone call in that given moment, right? So they might be on the website and they might be asking questions. So it is definitely important, but definitely not on mobile.
Yeah, and the one thing I do hate about it, and maybe it converts, and you're the expert, I'm not, but like I'm often on a lawyer's website because I'm trying to find something out about the lawyer, or sometimes they have an article that's interesting, but then I get this pop-up in the middle of the screen that then I have to go click out of, wanting to know if I want to chat with them. And it's worse on mobile because as I've aged, my eyes aren't as big, and sometimes, I don't know what it is with my iPhone, it will put the pop-up where the X is not visible on the screen, and I can't like move around to it, so I can't get rid of it.
Yeah,
and I just
that's a strategy, by the way. That's the intention to do that, right?
I know,
So that
but
you can't click on it. Yeah.
But the net result is I go to another site.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so if you are the consumer and it's happening to you, just imagine what it feels like to be the consumer as well. Yep. Same thing.
And another debate we're having is, we're looking at moving into there. We haven't asked you yet, so I'll just ask you online.
Yeah.
Chatbots versus paying a human being to chat.
Well, I think, chatbots are probably the more efficient way to go. And, I think that's probably the future. But making sure that they're following the right script, and then you're optimizing the script, and that you're just trying to get them to leave their name, email, phone number so that you can call them back. I've seen some really good examples of that, and then I've seen some pretty horrible examples of that, right? So it all really predicates upon the scripts that you're having them follow.
One last question. So this is my audience. We're so glad to be learning from you. What is one last thing you want to tell us?
I think the biggest thing is a lot of people, consume a lot of content like this, whether it's podcast or reading books, but there's not a lot of people that take action from it. I think, in life, you have the power to create a future that wasn't going to exist. All you need to do is take action, right? And I wake up every morning and I figure out, like, how can I take action today? Like you're going to send 3 videos, right? Every day, right? To somebody that could be a potential referral partner to you, right? You don't have to do that, right? But you do it, right? And you take action. And as a result of that, you are able to post those large checks on social media.
Yep.
Because you're building these new referral partners. But what if you didn't take action? What if you just thought about it and didn't take action? So if there's one piece of advice that I would say here, and everybody knows this, but sometimes we just forget, just take action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to continuing to get to know you better. And for anyone that wants to reach out to you, I know your website. It's
Hennessey.com. Hennessey.com. Yep. Mm-hmm.
With an EY, not just a Y. It's not
That's right.
It's not the cognac. It's the legal marketing people. And the links for both your book and for your agency will be in the show notes.
Perfect. And again, if you want a free copy of my book, go to freelawfirmseobook.com. Freelawfirmseobook.com, and my team will mail you out a free copy of the book.
Thank you for joining us on Trial Lawyer Nation. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you'd like to receive updates, insider information, and more from Trial Lawyer Nation, sign up for our mailing list at triallawyernation.com. You can also visit our episodes page on the website for show notes and direct links to any resources in this or any past episode. To help more attorneys find our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on any of our social media outlets. If you'd like access to exclusive, plaintiff lawyer-only content and live monthly discussions with me, send a request to join the Trial Lawyer Nation Insider Circle Facebook group. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to having you with us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Each year, the law firm of Cowan Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. This podcast has been hosted by Michael Cowan and is not intended to, nor does it create the attorney-client privilege between our host, guest, and any listener for any reason. Content from the podcast is not to be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions expressed herein are only those from which they came.